everyone, and this is Phoenix here, and today I'm going to be doing a pickup video, which I haven't done in like forever. I actually haven't even done one this year. In fact, all the games that I've gotten, like I've gotten from all the way from January till July, and there's only 5 of them, so yeah, I really haven't even gotten that many games. And you know what? I'm fine with that, because not only have I been saving up and also using, my money for certain other things that are important and necessities and all that, but also I've been, playing a lot of games in my backlog and, playing games that I probably should have played a long time ago, but just never got around to them. And I think a lot of people should be doing that lately because of all this shit going on. But anyways, so yeah, I'll be talking about the 5 games that I picked up this entire year into this one video, and some of them I actually have beaten, so which is pretty nice. And of course, I do hope everyone is having a great time. Hopefully, everyone is staying safe and all that good stuff. And of course, I'll be doing this video in the same old low budget fashion that I did with my anime videos, so because of that, yeah, anyways, there's not much I need to say else, but let's just get right to it. So the first game that I picked up this year, that I got in January, happens to be the Yakuza Collection on PS4. So this is an HD remaster of 3, 4, and 5, so now we have the entire thing on PS4 now, which is pretty great. And I used to own a copy of 3 on PS3 many years ago, but I don't own it anymore though. But now that I own this version's actually more complete than the original one, which is pretty nice. And I actually managed to beat 3 this year, and I can tell you that Yakuza 3 is a good entry, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite, mostly because the beginning part of the game takes a very long time for shit to actually get going, because you have to do a lot of stuff with the orphanage, and it takes forever. But when it does get going though, it is still a very good game though, but I wouldn't say it's as good as the remakes of Yakuza 1 and 2 or 0 or anything like that. And as for Yakuza 4, I haven't even played that one, at all, so I really don't know a whole lot about it, but I do look forward to playing it. I'm just kind of taking a break off playing the Yakuza games because I don't want to get too burnt out. And as for Yakuza 5, I did play a little bit of that one on the PS3 a couple years back, and I actually did like what I played of it, but I just had never got around to actually getting back to it because, I didn't even play 4 at all, and 3 at the time when I played it, I didn't even beat. But from the bit that I played of 5, it was pretty damn good. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in that game. There's a lot of there's a taxi driving mini game. They have that drum arcade game. I forget the name of it right now. And then there's even hunting mini games too. So 5 definitely does have a lot of content to it as well. And from what I remember of the story of it, it was still just as good as any of the other games. But yeah, it's very nice to have every single Yakuza game playable on one platform. So the next game that I picked up, the only one I got in February, happens to be the AI Somnian Files. And I ended up getting the Switch version because it was the only one that they had a copy of left, but I'm okay with it because this game is not graphically demanding or anything. And this game right here was made by the same creator that made the Zero Escape games, and for anyone that doesn't know, I am a huge fan of that series. I think it's just fucking awesome. Definitely my favorite visual novel of all time, and this game right here, I'd say, is pretty damn close at being one of my all-time favorites. So the story in this one is that you play as a detective who's trying to solve a weird murder case where people are getting their eyes ripped out. And one of the main things that he has to do in order to solve this crime is that he has to get them to go inside a machine in order to go inside their dreams. So in a way, it's kind of like the anime movie Paprika, or even the film that came after called Inception. So the concept right there is quite fascinating to me, and I'm always a big fan of that, given that I am a fan of those 2 films. And the dream sections of this game kind of plays like the puzzle room sections within Zero Escape, but instead of it being a first-person point-and-click, it actually plays like a third-person adventure game, so you actually get to move around a character. And just like Zero Escape, this game has a lot of very intense moments, and also some great characterization, some sad moments, some happy moments, some hilarious funny moments, like this one right here for an example.
Hey, Date, do you want this poster?
No, not really.
If you're up the swimsuit with a coin, you can scrape it off.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll throw it away for you.
So if you love these Zero Escape games, I think you would definitely really love this game a hell of a lot. But for me personally, as much as I do love this game, there is one thing I'm not super crazy about. It's not a huge deal, but it is something that I do feel like I need to mention. So the dream sections in this game, or the puzzle rooms, or whatever you want to call them, well, in this game, there's actually a time limit. So unlike in Zero Escape, you can take like as much time in the world as you want. In this game, no, there's a time limit to that. So if you fuck up a couple times, and you have to like restart that entire puzzle room from the very beginning. Now thankfully the puzzle rooms are usually not that long, but it's still pretty annoying that you have to restart it like over and over again if you keep making a mistake that you're unsure of. And what makes it worse too is that there's actually quite a few funny moments that are optional that are in the dream sections that you can interact with, but it takes up more time when you interact with them. So really, like, if you want to play this game with a guide and know everything what you're supposed to do, then there's going to be a lot of stuff you're going to be missing out on that are really hilarious. But other than this one complaint, this is still a great game with a great story that I can highly recommend, especially for anyone that wants to have a really good story in their video games, and that is not filled up with a bunch of propaganda, politically correct bullshit. So the next game that I got was the only one I got in the month of March, and that happens to be Nioh 2, and I ended up getting the collector's edition of this one. So for the first Nioh, I freaking loved that game. I thought it was really fun. Like, it was pretty much like a Dark Souls game, but with samurais, and had like a very fast and smooth combat system. I really loved it a lot. And as for the second game, I do think it is an improvement over the first one in many ways, for that not only does it have more weapons to play around with, it also has a create a character feature, which I like. Also, the game has a new mechanic where you can turn into a demon for a short time and also use demon skills and equip them to your character. It's actually quite nice and also adds more to the customizations you can do. So all of this is really great stuff, and I still do enjoy this game a lot, but unfortunately though, the only thing is that I do find that the level design in this game is still kind of more or less the same as it was in the first game. Now, I'm not saying that they like literally recycled the exact same levels, but it's more so that the level design in this game, like, hasn't really improved much from the first game. Like, most of the optional missions are pretty much exactly like the main missions, but things are, like, slightly different. Like, sometimes you might be going from, like, the boss room all the way to, like, the starting section from, like, you know, like, from the main mission. Like, it kind of has a lot of shit like that. Also, this game is very freaking long from what I've heard, and I barely even scratched the surface when I was playing this game, so this is definitely a game that does have a lot of content, which is not a bad thing, of course, but it is something to keep in mind that if you do plan on playing this game, is that this is going to be a game you're going to be spending a lot of time with, because there is just a shit ton of missions and bosses and everything. And it's been quite a bit since I've played this game, mainly because this is one of those games that also can take a lot of energy out of me, because some of these parts in this game can be very hard and difficult and can take a lot of energy out of you, but it is very satisfying. But of course, it's just one of those things I need to kind of take my time with. I guess you can say it's a good game that I can just like pick up and play it like at any given time and enjoy it in small doses. So yes, overall I would say that Nioh 2 is indeed better than the first game in many areas, but if there is one thing I do like about the first game more, is that I find the first game kind of starts out a lot easier than this one, because I find this one started out like pretty damn hard, where in the first game I think it did a better job like easing the player into getting into the game and learning its mechanics. And the next game we got here is on the Nintendo Switch, and this is the other game that I got fairly recently, and I haven't put a lot of time into it, so I can't say a crazy amount about it, and that happens to be Deadly Premonition 2, A Blessing in Disguise, or what's said on the cover is Dead 2-y Premonition. So this is a game I'm kind of surprised actually came out like so soon. This was a game I was kind of expecting to come out like later on this year or even like early next year. So in case anyone didn't know, I actually did beat Deadly Premonition 1 on the Switch earlier this year, and I did like the game. Yeah, even with all of the jankness, I actually did enjoy it for what it was. Mostly for the story and like the dialogue and all like the weirdness of it. But even with the problems that the Switch version did have with it, I was still able to enjoy the game just fine. It wasn't like broken enough to where like it totally ruined it or anything. But as for Deadly Premonition 2, however, well, from the little bit I've played of it, I only played it for about like 3 hours, and I can tell you that it's pretty much more or less the same as the first game, where, you know, you get to play as Detective Agent York, and he goes to a new small town, and also this game is a prequel, by the way. And the small town that he's in this time also has a lot of very weird characters that are very quirky, and he still likes to talk about a shit ton of random ass movies, which is always fun. Now here's the thing that some of you might be asking is that, does this game like improve a lot from the first game? And I'd say in some ways it seems to be more improved. For such examples, like you can actually use like your weapons like outside of like the nightmare world. There's a lot more things that you get to collect and make items out of. And I'm sure there's a lot of hidden stuff that I haven't even like figured out how to do in this game yet. But unfortunately, where this game does suffer though, is that I do find that the load times in this game are pretty fucking long for what they are. Also, whenever you're in the open world sections, like not when you're inside a house, but like when you're like roaming around in like the open world, the game does have quite a bit of slowdown. Now, the slowdown in the game isn't like borderline unplayable or anything, but it is kind of annoying, and I can see a lot of people getting turned off by that. So yeah, that's all I can really say about this game so far, and like I said, I do like this game for what it is. I don't know if I like it better than the first one. Like I said, I need to like play more of it, but so far, like, it does have a lot of the same stuff that I like about the first game. The story in it is still really fascinating to me. The dialogue is still really fun and really great, and the voice acting is really good too. In fact, I actually found that the voice cast in this game was quite impressive when I looked it up. So yeah, pretty much that Deadly Premonition 2 is that if you like the first game, you'll probably like this game, but if you didn't like the first game, then yeah, this one will not win you over. And now, as for the final game that I got this year so far, and that happens to be the Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I happened to get the really nice steel case of this game that I ended up finding a used copy of. I was very surprised about that. And yes, I do like the original Final Fantasy VII. I do think it's a really good game. I don't know if I'd say it's like my top favorite. I mean, I'd probably say it's maybe like my third or fourth. It really depends on my mood, really. But it is a good game. But as for this remake, I am enjoying it so far. I'm only at the chapter 16, so I'm pretty close on finishing it. But yeah, so far, I actually am really liking this game. So the combat in the game is like way fucking better than Final Fantasy 15. It like destroys that game's combat system in like every way, shape, or form. Because it's not just hold down circle to win. Like this game, like you actually have to like, you know, use some strategy. You can actually have to use your dodge button and all that kind of fun shit. But I do enjoy the combat system for what it is. I do think it is pretty solid, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite action RPG that came out in recent years though. That would probably have to go to East 8 for me personally, but this one is still pretty good, and I am pretty happy with that. And of course, the graphics are amazing looking as you would expect. The music is awesome. In fact, a lot of the remix tracks are really nice, and of course also give me the nostalgic brain buzz from hearing those and being like, oh yeah, I remember this song. Good times. And of course, being able to fully look around in the areas that you're very familiar with. Like, looking around in, like, where Aerith's house is, I was like, damn, I never would have thought that looking around where Aerith's house is would look so damn good. Now, as for the story of this game, the story in this game is pretty much more or less the same, but it actually happens, like, quite differently. Like, there's a lot of different stuff that happens in here, like the way how they get to certain areas. Like, for an example, like the part where you have to save Tifa from Don Corneo, like, you have to, like, do, like, a bunch of, like, shit just to be able to get her back, where in the original, it was a lot more quicker, where in this one, it actually takes a lot more time, and you gotta do a lot more, like, objectives to do so. And they actually added newer characters into that part as well, which I actually did like. In fact, I found that the character Madam M was pretty fucking hilarious, especially the part where she, like, totally loses her shit. And of course, I also have to mention that they added a lot of backstory to the character Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. I actually thought that was some really good stuff as well. So a lot of the changes that they did make with the story in this remake, I actually do approve of it. I actually do think it's quite nice, where that, like, so far, it's like, yeah, we already know, like, the general idea of the story, like, so we can predict what's gonna happen, but it's the way how it happens that's kind of different, and I like that. I actually think it's kind of cool so far. And all the new voice acting is really good as well for the most part. There's a couple roles where I kind of like their original voices a tiny bit better, but I still find that the newer roles are still pretty good. The only one that I'm not a fan of is I find that the new Sephiroth voice is not very good in this one, especially compared to the older one. But then again though, like this is only like part 1 of this whole Final Fantasy remake, and he doesn't have a whole lot of screen time, so maybe in like the second part, the voice might actually improve and I will like it more, but I can tell you just from watching it from this part, I definitely don't like it as much as the role that he did in Advent Children. But yeah, overall I would say that I'm quite happy with this remake so far. Obviously, I would have preferred if they, remade the whole game at once, but even just doing with this whole first part with just Midgar only, I am pretty happy with it. There's a couple things that, like I said, that could have been a little better, but for the most part, I'm pretty satisfied. And that's all I have to say about the games that I picked up in 2020 so far, because, there just hasn't been a whole lot. But that's okay though, because there's still a lot of games that have came out since this whole shit show started that I wish I'd gotten, but, priorities take place first. So what do you guys think? Have you guys played any of these games? And if you have, tell me your thoughts, or if there are ones that you look forward to playing, or is there any games that you've gotten recently that you really liked? So anyways, let's all have discussions about it. So with that said, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.